Woods Station in the Yazoo, Mississippi Delta region. And for 5 days, I had the most miserable hunting of my life. I didn't catch a rabbit. I didn't catch a skunk. I didn't shoot at a squirrel, let alone a bear or a deer. For 5 days, we saw nothing, and it was miserable. Finally, on the 5th day, Mr. Hope Collier, my guide, says, "Mr. Roosevelt, why don't you and the other gentlemen go into this blind, and I'll take the dogs into the swamp and we'll try to drive a bear out to you." I thought this was a capital idea. And off to the blind we went, and we sat there for hours, not seeing a skunk or a squirrel or a rabbit, let alone a bear or a deer. We finally decided to go back to the camp, and off we went. No sooner had we gotten back to the camp than out of the swamp came Mr. Hope Collier, and in front of him were these yapping, yelling, nipping, growling, biting dogs. And in front of them was a bear. Not just any bear, but probably the most pathetic specimen of a bear there ever was. This bear was a runt of a bear. It was torn and battered, and it was nearly starved to death itself. It looked like it didn't take much effort for the bear just to say, "Put me out of my misery." It was such a runt of a bear. But it still had some fight in it. And so when the dogs drove it into a marshy area, the bear, with a mighty swipe of the paw, killed one of the dogs. But as it did, it left its neck uncovered. Mr. Hope Collier brought his rifle down on the neck of the bear, rendered it unconscious. He tied a rope around the neck of the bear. Then he tied the rope to the tree, and then he sent for Roosevelt. The guide came back to the camp. "Mr. Roosevelt, we have your bear." And I was beside myself. I grabbed my rifle, mounted my horse, and off to the swampy area we rode. But when we got there, and I dismounted, did I find a massive specimen of a manly bear, the king of the forest and the wilderness? No. I found this torn and battered and bleeding and next to death bear, no bigger than myself. I stepped back and raised a hand and said, "I will not shoot that bear. There's nothing masterful in hunting this bear. There's nothing to be proud of. I've done no honorable thing. It's not even worth killing for the meat to feed the men back at camp. I will not shoot that bear." And I left. A newspaperman in Washington, D.C. named Mr. Clifford Berryman heard about this, and he decided to draw an editorial cartoon about it. And in this cartoon, he put on one side Theodore Roosevelt in his hunting gear with his hand outstretched. The caption read, "I will not shoot that bear crossing the line in Mississippi." It was a political cartoon. On the other side of that cartoon panel was the bear. A strange thing happened. This was in October of '02, and people kind of liked that bear. Now, Mr. Berryman, being a typical newspaper man, knew how to make some money. And when he realized people liked that bear, he drew it again. And the next cartoon that had Theodore Roosevelt in it also had the bear in it. And people liked that bear, and they told him about it. And he kept putting in his cartoons. Every cartoon that featured Theodore Roosevelt also featured that bear in the month of October and early November. A strange thing happened in the cartoon. Instead of a bear being ragged and beaten down and bleeding and downtrodden, all of a sudden it started to get smaller and cuddlier. It started to get furrier. It started to get button eyes and button nose, and it was just the most cutest thing. And instead of being a hungry, starving bear, it was an adorable bear, the type you just want to squeeze and hold. In New York City, the toy store, F.A.O. Schwartz, had purchased 300 Bavarian stuffed bears for Christmas. And in November, late November, they had 300 Bavarian stuffed bears for sale. They hadn't sold a one. Across the river in Brooklyn, Mr. Morse Spitzcombe had purchased dozens of stuffed Bavarian bears for his toy store. And in late November, he had dozens of Bavarian stuffed bears still to sell. He saw one of these cartoons and an idea came to him, and he wrote a letter to the White House said, Mr. Roosevelt, I have a toy store in Brooklyn, New York. I have bears for sale. They're not selling. Would you mind if I named my bear for you? Well, of course I didn't mind. Of course, I couldn't figure out how naming a bear Roosevelt would help it sell either, but told him to go ahead and do so, and he did so, and he put a sign in the window. And the sign read, "For sale, Teddy's, apostrophe, bear." And he sold out in 3 days. FAO Schwartz saw this happening. They instructed their people, put a sign in the window, "For sale, Teddy's, apostrophe, bear." And they sold out within 3 days. FAO Schwartz told their stores in Chicago, St. Louis, and San Francisco to put similar signs in the window. They did, and they sold their bears out. That is the story of how the teddy bear came to be, but I'll tell you a secret. I don't like the name Teddy. My wife Edith calls me Theodore the. Those people who work for me call me Mr. Roosevelt or boss. Those who work with me, those associates call me Mr. Roosevelt or Colonel. But no one calls me Teddy. However, if come this election day, any of you men who go into the ballot, the election booth here in Pennsylvania or from whatever state you're in, if on that election day you go into that booth and you remember the smile of your little girl or little boy as they hold a teddy bear and you vote the right way, you can call me Teddy. Thank you very much. We hope you've enjoyed your stay here in Strasburg. God bless you all.